In my last video, I showed you guys how to run the Android operating system on your MacBook, and we also ran a couple Android apps and Android games, and you guys love that. So I got a comment later on in the evening that I should run some high-end Android games and Android apps. I actually ran all of them though, but not all of them worked. But besides all that, I got some pretty interesting findings. One thing I have to tell you guys at the end of all this is that you can't completely place your hopes in an Android run by a Mac to run, well, Android. It's kind of an oxymoron in this case. At the end, once you are dealing with reliability, you have to run Android apps and Android games on an Android. Is that you guys coming all the way to say you want to buy a Mac, but then you begin to complain when you can't run Windows apps on the Mac. But since we're just having fun here and this is not a reliability test, I ran Genshin Impact. And I must say the fact that an Android game required me to burn over 29 gigabytes of data just to get the complete files is crazy. It's a good thing I need an unlimited plan though. So Genshin Impact surprisingly ran well on the Android on the Mac, that's BlueStacks. I was using an M1 MacBook Air to test it, so I couldn't really comfortably use the highest settings. The load was too much. You know, on BlueStacks by default we use 4 cores and we also use 4 gigs of allocated memory, so you might be able to get better experience if, let's say, you have more GPU cores and also more memory to allocate to BlueStacks. So at the end I had to settle for these graphic settings and these FPS just to make up for my lack of cores and extra memory. At least though I could get up to 30 frames per second with reduced frame drops, so I can consider Genshin Impact quite playable on the M1 MacBook Air. Don't forget, I never actually allocated my complete resources. I didn't want to do that. At best, I gave it 6 gigs of memory and 6 cores of graphics. I couldn't give it the full 8 cores and 8 gigs of memory because I didn't want my other apps to go haywire. You can enjoy my Genshin Impact gameplay. I'm actually a newbie, so you can't really blame me if I'm making those weird movements. And the controls are not so difficult. Yeah, when I use the trackpad, all I have to do is use scrolling gestures for left and right to turn around. And when I use a wireless mouse, all I have to do is click down, left click down, and then drag around to look around. Then use the WASD to move around, top, bottom, left, right. I tried out Warzone Mobile and it is not even supported to begin with. Fortunately, at least it supports Call of Duty Mobile. You can check out the gameplay for that one in the other BlueStacks video I first did. Then for CarX Streets, it actually works quite fine. I don't know if I downloaded the right CarX Streets, you didn't specify, and I found a number of them in the Google Play Store, but I took the one that looks kind of new and heavier. Yeah, but then the game ran quite right at 30 FPS with technically 0 frame drops, but then the controls are literally impossible to deal with. Maybe because I chose the on-screen like left right buttons, maybe I could have chosen a tilt. I noticed it's easier for BlueStacks to program keys into those tilt movements than like actual manual controls that are meant to be on Android display. Anyways though, the game supports an external controller, so if you have an external controller you might explore that option in BlueStacks as a whole, not just CarX Streets. Try it out for other games as well. The one I didn't really get is that one called Winlator. It seems to be a kind of Windows emulator for Android. Yeah, I think that's how Android users get to run Windows games on their Android with that emulator. I never even thought there would be a Windows emulator on an Android. It should be the other way around. Anyways, the app exists. I downloaded it on GitHub. Yeah, the app runs, it works, but then you can't navigate. You can't even imagine having to use my own macOS cursor to control the cursor in Winlator. The worst part is that looks like Windows XP.